retired U.S. Air Force fighter pilot who served in the military for over 24 years. During my time in service and as a senior military leader, it's been my responsibility to face my fears and lead with courage to empower my team and enable us to succeed. Because of the high-stakes environment she found herself in during those 24 years, she developed distinctive leadership techniques and principles different from what you might find in most leadership books. In her book, Flying in the Face of Fear, she shares those techniques and principles with you, so you can make a difference and an impact with the teams you lead. In this book, you'll discover how to cultivate a wingman culture on your team where each person is part of something bigger and more important than themselves, develop a fighter-pilot mindset for failing forward and embracing risk, even in times of uncertainty and stress, prepare, practice, and plan for contingencies, create your own flight plan to find balance and fulfillment, and much more.
Sergeant Scott DeLuzio is a combat veteran who served in the military as an Army National Guard infantryman. Not only is he the creator of the Drive On podcast, he is the author of Surviving Son. Surviving Son is a compelling true story that provides the reader with an insight into the life of a combat infantryman who fought in Afghanistan at the same time as his younger brother, Stephen, who was killed in action just miles away. The story provides many details that give the reader a clear picture of what it was like to fight for their country in a hostile war zone. Scott explains with raw emotion how he learned of his brother's death, and minutes later, he was engaged in combat with the Taliban, the same group responsible for his brother's death. He vividly reveals how he continued to struggle with PTSD from the stresses of combat, the loss of his only sibling, and the transition to civilian life. As you read the story of his return to civilian life, it will leave you laughing and crying, sometimes at the same time. However, in the end, Scott's message is one of hope. He addresses the reality versus perception that often accompanies those struggling after a traumatic event. He openly explains how a flashback or reliving experiences can for a few moments have him believing that he is standing on the hot, dusty terrain in eastern Afghanistan. This book is a reminder of the sacrifices that the military and their families make to keep us safe. It is especially timely with the withdrawal of troops in Afghanistan, and Scott has addressed his feelings on the subject. He believes that every service member who took part in the war did what was needed to keep Americans safe at home by taking the fight to the enemy. We did what our country asked us to do. Be proud of that.
Delete the Adjective, A Soldier's Adventures in Ranger School was written by Lieutenant Colonel Lisa Jaster. Lisa Jaster served on active duty as a U.S. Army combat engineer and Army Ranger. She is currently serving in the U.S. Army Reserves. When you delete your adjectives, who are you? Most people limit themselves to their labels. They embrace barriers based on the box that society puts them in. But your adjectives aren't your destiny. In Delete the Adjective, A Soldier's Adventures in Ranger School, Lisa Jaster proves your merit should always trump your labels. Lisa didn't confine herself to the adjectives of middle-aged or female. Instead, she became one of the first 3 women to graduate from the United States Army Ranger program. For those 6 months in the program, her adjectives didn't matter. What mattered was that she slept on the same forest ground as her peers, typically 23-year-old men on active duty. She ran the same mock missions and battle drills. She demonstrated the fortitude of a ranger. Delete the Adjective relives Lisa's experiences, written in the field notebook every student in Ranger School carries. Throughout the Ranger course, Lisa proved that mettle breaks down any barrier society might place on you. Upon graduation at Duke University, Captain Shannon Huffman-Polson served 8 years in the U.S. Army Aviation Corps spanning 3 continents. She became one of the first women to pilot the AH-64 Apache. Shannon believes in every person's ability and believes developing courageous leaders for a better world will help to change our world. The grit factor, courage, resilience, and leadership in the most male-dominated organization in the world. With its gripping narrative and relatable takeaways, The Grit Factor is both inspiring and pragmatic, a book that will energize and enlighten current and aspiring leaders everywhere, whether male or female.
Lieutenant Commander Amy Forsyth began her career as an enlisted military journalist in the U.S. Marine Corps and currently serves as a public affairs officer in the U.S. Navy Reserve. Heroes Live Here, a tribute to Camp Pendleton Marines since 9/11, contains more than 150 full-color images and beautifully designed graphic illustrations depicting Camp Pendleton Marines' involvement in combat operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. It's a one-of-a-kind book filled with perspectives and reflections from post-9/11 warfighters who've called Camp Pendleton home. This book guides readers through the sprawling military base and shares heartwarming tributes behind more than a dozen monuments honoring those who served and sacrificed in operations enduring freedom and Iraqi freedom. Heroes Live Here started as a passion project to showcase the memorials and markers on Camp Pendleton and has turned into a collaborative work of art that honors our fallen heroes of the post-9/11 generation. Amy was first stationed at Camp Pendleton in 1995 and still has strong ties to the base and surrounding communities.